Hello, everyone. This is the 10th MiDiGo webinar. So it's a very critical webinar for us because already we are trying to finalize our Erasmus Mundus design measure project. And now today, Kathy Lee is with us. Hello, Kathy.
Hello.
And I would like to introduce you first. Actually, Kathy Young Liu is the department chair and professor of public policy at the Andrew Young School of Policy Studies, Georgia State University. And she received her PhD in urban planning from the University of Southern California, and she serves as the faculty director of the urban planning and policy concentration in bachelor and master and PhD degrees, especially in public policy degree programs, I think. Yeah, and also she is faculty advisor for the graduate certificate in planning and economic development. And we are very glad to be with you today. And she will today give a speech on welcoming America, welcoming cities. Okay, now Kathy, floor is yours, and you can start.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Dr. Sonata, to invite me to this series. I mean, it's such a great effort to bring in speakers from different parts of the world to talk about migration issues. So really glad to be here. So today I'm going to talk to you about this kind of new initiative called Welcoming America, and associated with it, the Welcoming Cities, and also the Welcoming Region, which is also a fairly new kind of initiative of the Welcoming America. I think maybe my slides are long for the time that I'm allocated, so some of it I'll kind of go through fairly quickly, but really to give you a sense of some of these new policies and new initiatives that's taking place in the United States. So the context of, for all of us doing migration research is certainly the continuous growth of the immigrant population in the US. As you can see in the left-hand side, we actually do have a continuous growth of the immigrant population by decade here in the US. And as you can see, the blue line, which is the absolute numbers of immigrants, and the orange line is the share of immigrants in the total population. So that share right now we're talking about around 14%, but the absolute number of immigrants, as you can see, has really increased substantially over the years. One phenomenon with this kind of rapid increase of the immigrant population is their residential dispersion, right? That from kind of being concentrated in a few what we call the gateway states, gateway metropolitan areas, immigrants are now settling in states that haven't had a lot of immigrant history of reception before, as well as within the metropolitan areas, within the states, move beyond just the central cities into the suburban areas, the rural areas, the exurban areas. So there has been a whole diversity of spatial settlement of the immigrant population, which create issues for some cities and towns, which hasn't had a whole lot of immigrants settling in these places before, in these communities before, how to cope with the immigrant increase, how to receive the immigrants, right? How to deal with immigrants on various policy issues. The immigrant policy, to a large extent, is a federal policy domain, right? A lot of the policies is actually at the federal level about how many immigrants can come in from which countries and through which channels. However, due to some federal policy inertia, increasingly, the policy making for the immigrant population has been with the subnational governments that include the local governments and the state governments. So research has shown that there has been a lot of kind of local government level policies and initiatives that have happened in the United States. I mean, this research is till 2011, but we certainly by now we actually have a whole lot more of these policy making. And these policies is really kind of has a wide range of policies, ranging from the most kind of supportive kind of policies like sanctuary cities to the more restrictive and exclusionary policies, such as whether you actually have to be a U.S. citizen to work, right? Whether you have to have a legal status to work. So it's a wide range of the more restrictive to the more kind of the supportive kind of policies. So in this context, this Welcome America initiative started. This is a nonprofit organization that started in 2009 and has really grown fairly rapidly since then. I mean, this is a network, right? It's a network of communities who are interested in collaborate, share resources, and exchange best practices through this kind of a platform and network. And so for this kind of a general initiative, I have done a number of research, and I'm going to share mainly two with you today. And so this is actually the where the network looks like right now, right? I'll show you that when the first paper that I'm going to present today was actually when we conducted that research, there were 50 welcoming cities. But by now, there are already 125 welcoming cities or local governments join this network. And the interesting thing also is that nonprofit organizations can also join this network. So on this map, which is taken directly from the Welcome America website, there are actually 152 nonprofits that have joined the network. So these hearts are the nonprofits, right? And the green icon, that's the local government agency. So altogether, there are 279 of these agencies, which is kind of an interesting phenomenon because usually for the other networks and associations, it's either only for local governments or only for nonprofits. So also from their website, you can see some of the things that they do, how they connect, right, the different agencies from these different parts of the country, how they build the communities, and how they make changes. So the two related studies that I'm going to go through today, both are published already. One is called the Welcoming Cities, Immigration Policy at the Local Government Level, and that's Urban Affairs Review, collaborative with a former student of mine, and another paper collaborative with several colleagues called Welcoming Immigrant Integration Beyond the Local Level, Atlanta's One Region Initiative. This is kind of the new welcoming region idea. So first, I want to walk you through fairly briefly about this Welcoming Cities paper we did. And at that time, when we concluded our study back in 2016, as I mentioned, there are 50 cities in the US that claim themselves as welcoming cities. And as you can see on the map, that there are both cities that are in these kind of more established gateways, say California, you'll see San Francisco, Los Angeles. These cities are included, but also many of them are in kind of what we call the Rust Belt of the U.S., right? Kind of that's the areas, kind of the, for example, Detroit, right? For example, Cleveland, and these cities that these places that used to receive a large number of immigrants, but their economies have been declining for some time, right? Because of their declining manufacturing industry base. So we have these cities in as well. So it has a fairly broad geographic representation from different parts of the country that have joined welcoming America. So that lands us the question of why, right? Which cities want to join? Why do they join? So we actually conducted a data analysis to compare the cities that join as compared to the cities that of a similar scale but haven't joined, just to see, what can we know about the rationales and motivations, reasons for their adoption. So it's a policy adoption kind of idea. So when we map these cities in terms of their immigrant level and immigrant growth, we also see a wide spectrum. I think it's not showing up as well as I want it to be. But so if we see the four different spectrums or matrices, right, some cities have high level of immigrants and high growth, and some have high level of immigrants but low growth, right? Whereas some have low level but low growth and low level and high growth. So what exactly, when they claim themselves as welcoming cities, what exactly do they do, right? And so interestingly, some of the things in the policy toolbox of this welcoming cities, some of it really centers on this idea of business development. So I have two examples of cities and their initiatives here. One is the St. Louis Mosaic Project, and they have all these different initiatives for immigrant entrepreneurs and trying to provide these one-stop shops and these different kind of services for potential immigrant entrepreneurs. So you see, there's a kind of a very important goal of trying to attract immigrant entrepreneurs, immigrant workers to really revitalize their economy, right? And so we do see that in these kind of Rust Belt cities a lot. Similarly, this is the Global Detroit initiative. It also provides this entrepreneurship training because once entrepreneurs start businesses, then they will be able to hire workers, contribute to the local revenues and all these economic development impact. And similarly, the Global Detroit also promotes EB5 investment within the cities through lowering the investment threshold and provide some services and support. Another important component of the toolbox is community development. So in here, we also have some examples. For example, the Welcoming Atlanta, they set up a special office in the mayor's office of the Office for International Affairs. And they provide some cultural competency training for all the city employees and also remove some public service access barriers for immigrants. So these are the kind of things to make the connection, right? To make people talk to each other, make the services more accessible to the immigrants at the community level, as well as some cultural events, some kind of showcase of cultural showcase and these kind of activities. So some of the, in this paper, some of the analysis we did is that, why do these cities adopt the welcoming cities? And several different theories inform our inquiry, right? There are some theoretical frameworks in the literature, not in the immigration policy domain, but in other policy domains on why do cities want to have policy innovations, want to have these kind of, in this case, almost a symbolic policy, right? To claim that you are being inclusive and being welcoming to try to attract immigrants. So some of the theories include, cities, they lagging immigrant growth might want to seek to attract immigrants and global talent, what we call the local needs theory. Right? There's also this kind of economic imperative theory that says cities that suffer economically and fiscally could be more likely to join, right? Because they want to use this as a tool to promote their local economic development. And also, there's some kind of institutional structure and capacity theory, say cities that are liberal, right, that are more diverse and more educated, they're more likely to join the Welcoming America initiative. So we run some data for the sake of time. I'm not going to go into a lot of details, but we used some data from the American Community Survey, which is the census. We used some Welcome America data, some local government finance data, as well as the presidential election data, just to see kind of who do the local community vote for, right, Republican or Democrat. And we use logit regression that with welcome initiative adoption, 0 or 1, right? 1 as you adopt, 0 as you didn't adopt. And we actually have a series of city characteristics to predict, ranging, that those are based on the theories I just mentioned, ranging from demographic characteristics to economic conditions, to the fiscal health, and to the political climate of the cities. Okay, I'm not going to go through all these logit regression results. Again, these are published, and I'm happy to talk more about these if people are interested. But I'll run to the conclusion, which when we started this research is really kind of one of the first studies to start to look at this welcoming cities phenomenon. There has been many more research and more study that has started to look at welcoming cities. But it's the interesting thing here is really a bottom-up new wave of inclusive kind of local government responses, right? That kind of give people that kind of a position or kind of a symbolic stance of what their view of immigrants are in this case. So the actual policy engagement, the actual policy initiatives actually range widely from city to city. So once they claim I'm a welcoming city, some may be doing a lot in this kind of a symbol, but some actually might be doing fairly minimum. So the actual efforts vary greatly from city to city. Nonetheless, many cities see it as a gesture that they show to the world that this is how we view this population. So, as I mentioned, we see that that the welcoming cities really focus in terms of their policies, focus on business development, focus on community development. We see that this is a complex decision making, and all the variables showed a lot of significance when we conduct the regression analysis, and especially that cities that are larger, cities that are more diverse in terms of their population, if they're more educated, liberal, right, that are economically troubled, and that is measured by their unemployment rate and the change in unemployment rate, so economically troubled, but fiscally sound, are more likely to become welcoming cities. So in other words, these are, if you have a more diverse population, they might be more open to welcome and include immigrants. But at the same time, that some of these cities have some economic concerns that they want to bring in the immigrant workers and entrepreneurs, but they also need the fiscal kind of a strength and capacity to implement some of these policies. Because when you become welcoming cities, some of these cities start new offices, they start new programs. So all of these need the financial resources behind it. So that is kind of our first research, right? That look at a kind of a first look at what are these welcoming cities and why do the ones that the original 50 became welcoming cities. So then the next paper that I want to briefly review is this idea of the welcoming region, and this is an interesting also initiative that, because in the Atlanta metropolitan statistical area, the region that I'm living in, right, where Georgia State is located, it also happened to be where Welcoming America first headquartered in. It's in a suburban area of Atlanta. but now, I mean, they have moved to the Washington D.C. area. But still, I mean, this initiative has quite some impact in the region. So in this region, there are 6 or 8 different cities that claims themselves as welcoming cities and have joined this welcoming cities network. So this initiative that's joined by Welcoming America and some local foundations, community foundations, is that instead of having these scattered welcoming cities, right? Shall we kind of brand the whole region as a welcoming region? So it's kind of a regional governance, a kind of an idea. I mean, we hear about this regional governance idea in other contexts like environmental, right, as in transportation. But here it's kind of in immigrant governance, it's a fairly new idea that this whole region can have something kind of bigger than the individual pieces, the individual cities. So here, this map actually has a lot of pieces of information in it. Each of the cities that municipalities, Atlanta, Brookhaven, Clarkston, Decatur, Darville, East Point, Norcross, Stockbridge. So these are the cities that are already welcoming cities. And here the grayscale shows you on the census tract level, which is a proxy for community, for local community, the share of immigrants in the census tract. So you can see that unlike some of the more established gateway cities where a lot of immigrants settle in the central cities to start with, Atlanta as a kind of a start to boom economically and population-wise, really from the 1970s, 1980s, immigrants actually settle more concentration and clustering in the suburban areas, as you can see right here, right, to the north and east corners of the metro areas versus the whole city area. I can tell you that immigrants population is about less than 10% of the city's population, but in some of these suburban areas, the immigrant population can go up to 30% and 40%. So again, the immigrant spatial distribution is uneven, and the rationale of these cities in joining these efforts is also different, right? So to the ones that have a lot of immigrants, it's more about how do we receive the immigrants? How do we provide support? Whereas for the city of Atlanta, I was at a luncheon when the city of Atlanta claimed itself to be welcoming city. The mayor back then said, we want to understand why immigrants do not settle in the city, and we do want to attract more immigrants. So even within the region, the situations are very different in terms of, why they want to join and what kind of goals that they want to achieve. So for this kind of one region initiative, which is joined by Welcome America and the Community Foundation, started in 2018, where they come together to try to create this blueprint. They created a steering committee, and some of my co-authors on this paper are actually steering committee members. Right? So this steering committee have some, representatives from different sectors, the business sector, nonprofit sector, the universities, to discuss and generate ideas of what exactly will a welcoming region look like, right? And so they all have a lot of group meetings, they had a lot of brainstorming, and finally presented their recommendation of what would this welcoming region look like. So I'm not going to go into details, but here I just want to show you that the demographic makeup of these 8 different cities as part of the region are actually very different, right? And here we're looking at the racial ethnic composition. So there are some cities that are actually minority majority, meaning that the minority population make up more than half of the population, whereas there are other places or some of the other cities that are still the white population make up the vast majority of the population. So their demographic makeups are very different and similar to their immigrant population, right? That immigrant population, as I already mentioned, some are really high, right? So for example, Clarkston, this is their growth from 2010 to 2019. Clarkston is a refugee receiving city here in the Atlanta region, right? So you can see its immigrant growth is really high, whereas there are some, this is an in-town neighborhood, their immigrant growth is actually negative, so that they actually see a decrease in the immigrant population. So again, this is to show you that unfortunately, I don't think we have time to go into a lot of details, but to show you that for each of the cities, their scenario with regards to the immigrant population are also different. So here, after all the um, kind of the discussions, right, a lot of research, here is the blueprint that's the welcoming region initiative come up with, right? So what would a welcoming region look like? And here are 7 different areas. So as you can see, the civic engagement, safe communities, government leadership, communities. This, I think, it's business development, somehow it's not showing very well here, and education and equitable access. So here are the 7 major blocks of areas that these communities are saying that these would, if we do all of that, right, that would make this kind of a really a welcoming region. And for each of them, there are more specific recommendations. So across the 7 areas, we have 59 different recommendations that come into this plan. And how do they enforce that the city is actually sticking to the plan? Is that they actually have a kind of a certification process where that they give these medals to the cities based on the number of recommendations that they will implement. So remember, just now we have a total 59 different recommendations. So here, if a municipality would do 22 to 27 recommendations, they got a gold. 16 to 21 they got a silver, and 10 to 15 they got a bronze. Right, so that's the plan of how do we actually make the cities responsible to implement the plan. And the idea is, so this is kind of a certification process, and the idea is that they will present the work that they're doing, they'll share their experiences and all of that. So what the research team did, and you will realize that that's 2018, and coming into 2019 and 2020, COVID-19 hit. So a lot of this work is kind of stopped, right, or delayed because of that, that people's need to respond quickly to public health emergencies. So what we did is that we analyzed the report that they submitted, right, to Welcoming America, to this initiative, and just to see kind of what recommendations have they started to do, right? And again, the idea is that this will be for several years, but we only have 1 year, that 2019, because coming in 2020, this kind of is postponed, right? And so we only have 1 year of data to see in what areas are cities implementing these recommendation policies. And also we have the 2 different categories. The blue is those that are already completed or in progress, and the future is what these cities say, okay, now I plan to do it, right, in the future. And we sum them up across the 8 cities, and this is the bar graph you're looking at. So what we see that where that people make the most efforts, right, within 1 year is this area of government leadership. Right, 13 altogether have completed or in progress, and 11 for the future. And the second kind of the highest number of policy recommendations being implemented is economic development. And we see that 8 are done and 8 are being planned. right? Which is interesting, as you can see. And some of these other areas, for example, education, we see fairly low efforts. Okay. And we also summarize it across the cities to see which cities are doing how many recommendations. And here we see that the ones that did the most is Atlanta. And that's, as you can see, altogether 24 different kind of recommendations being planned or they have already done, right? And Doraville is the next one up, as well as there's also Clarkston and Brookhaven and so on and so forth. So in other words, that is also uneven. So to summarize, again, this is kind of a new thing after the welcoming cities to this welcoming region, that we see that this a lot of efforts has been put into this new initiative, but the actual progress towards these goals are uneven across the different policy areas and across different cities. It seems the ones that more cities are gravitating towards are the ones that are somewhat uh, low hanging fruit, right? That are kind of easier to implement, that are easier to do, lower cost, versus the ones that would involve more substantive kind of efforts. And also, as you can see, the city of Atlanta being kind of the most uh, resourced city of the whole region, also with the more institutional economic resources, also made more efforts. Okay, so however, as I mentioned, because of COVID-19, this regional approach being a very interesting experiment, what will be the future of this initiative is still yet to be seen. Okay, so I think that's all I have for now. And thank you very much for listening.
Oh, thank you very much, Katie. That was a brilliant webinar. Actually, that was very informative for us because this is a American perspective. Actually, we are here working on European levels, especially we are focusing. For example, I was a partner, a project related to human rights cities in Europe, and we are trying to um, develop indicators related to different levels. For example, gender issue, a migration refugee issue, and
Mhm.
disability, so related to urban diversity issues. And but your perspective, this welcoming America initiative is very interesting, and I learned a lot with your webinar. And I think we should think more interactively, European side and American side issues. Yeah, we need more debate about it. Thank you.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, look forward to more conversation on these kind of more comparative perspectives.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.